everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are going back to one of our favorite subjects, which is power exchange. And there is a term that I have been ruminating on for a really long time called alignment of will or alignment of the wills. And I've heard this in so many places, but I didn't really fully understand what it meant until I looked into it further. And so for this video, we are going to be diving into what it means to align wills, where that term comes from, and how you can use it to improve your power exchange relationship. Now, usually with videos like this, I like to start with a basic definition, and then we go down into the nitty-gritty from there. But with this phrase, kind of defining what it is half of the conversation. Now, I first came across the terminology when I was, I think, at a conference, maybe like Kinkfest or Leather Rain, where MS or Master Slave and the leather community is more common, which is where you really hear this come up. But when I did hear it, it was in conversations around things like how to deepen your submission, how to go from DS to MS, how to build an authority transfer or power exchange relationship. But people kind of just threw the phrase around. They were saying it like they would like safe word or SSC and didn't really stop to actually tell anyone what it meant and assumed that everyone else just got what it meant from the context of where it was being talked about. But I don't really think that does a good enough job on its own, especially when we are talking about it in isolation like we're doing right now. And I thought that when I was in the research process for this video that I would surely find some information, right? Maybe some kind of old Angel Fire website, some like 90s blog post, something, right? Because this is the kind of term that would exactly exist on the oldest parts of the BDSM internet, or so I thought. I could not find anything about this. I tried Bing, I tried Google, I tried Yahoo, I went through FetLife, I went through Tumblr, Twitter, anywhere, any social media where people talk about how to do BDSM. I found nothing. And it's funny because you look at actual events and schedules for things like conferences, and you see the term alignment of will pop up in the event descriptions or in the class description, and it is again never really defined. So the only thing I could find was an archived blog post from 2014. And when I say archived, I mean the website is no longer available. I had to go to the Internet Archive and find a reference of it from like 2016, I think. And that's the only place this actually seems to exist online. So just know that going into the rest of this conversation, that most of my opinion here is based on my own memory, one blog post from 2014, and my personal intuition about what I think this is about. So I am very open to the idea that I could be wrong. If you have any other ideas, information, context, anything, please put that down below, because I think this is going to be more of a conversation about what we think this term means, more so than an objective, this is exactly what this thing is about. So one thing that came up a lot in my research that I was really surprised about was Christianity. I am being serious. The top search result for multiple searches I did related to this all came up with the same website, which was Bondage in Christ, BDSM in a Christian Marriage. And that website it's a treasure. And all I have to say is, why hasn't Girl Defined told us how to have godly threesomes in our good, wholesome Christian marriages? Because I feel like that is a missed opportunity. And by the way, if you guys want me to like deep dive into that website, it is hilarious, it is amazing, and I would love to explore it further. But the reason why I am talking about this is it seems like the origin of the term in BDSM may be related to the same reasons why Christians talk about this as well, as seen in this passage from Proverbs. Listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you will be counted among the wise. Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Just switch out master for the Lord and submissive or slave for person, and you can see why maybe this would come up in the context of power exchange. Now, I don't know if that's actually where it comes from. Again, I have very limited information I am working with here, but I can at least see the connection because from what it seems like to me, it appears that the idea of alignment of will is from this concept that between a D type and an S type, the wills need to flow together rather than being in conflict with each other and one will trying to dominate over the other. And what this usually ends up looking like is the S type seeking to understand the intentions and motivations of the D type and aligning themselves to that. And I think this is also potentially why some people prefer MS or master slave over DS or dominant and submissive. And I actually have a story about this. So I was taking a class, I think, last year during the pandemic, and there was a master-slave couple that was in the leather community that was telling their story of how they became a master and slave. And to make a long story short, basically they had met, they had hit it off really well, and they initially tried an MS style relationship. But for some reason, it didn't work out to begin with. And so they decided, I think the reason for why this isn't working is because MS is too demanding. And so we need to move to doing DS, dominant and submissive, instead, because people assume because there is less transfer of authority, less power exchange, that DS is easier than MS, which is not necessarily the case, which is what they found out, because as they moved from being in an MS relationship into being just dom and just submissive, the now submissive really struggled to find her place in that relationship. And it was for a lot of reasons, but a lot of it also came down to there was now a lot of struggle that wasn't necessarily there before. There was a lot of rules lawyering, there was a lot of talking back and questioning and always thinking, well, what about this? You didn't say this, you meant this. And there was just a lot of conflict that happened as a result. And attempting to save the relationship because they did have a very strong connection, what they discovered after having many conversations about values, intentions, goals, desires for the relationship, they kind of worked out that MS was actually what they needed, and they used that concept of aligning wills to make that happen, because when they tried that, when they moved from this space of like kind of bratting a little bit sort of and questioning and being like, what about this and all of that, when they moved to that place of knowing the master's values, knowing their intentions, knowing their goals, and the slave was able to align to that, suddenly their relationship became very peaceful and mutually fulfilling, and they have had a happy relationship ever since then because they have based it on that alignment. They were able to move to that place of surrender and wanting what the master wants for them. And I want to take a pause here and emphasize something, because I am sure that some of you right now are going, oh my God, no, hard limit. I could never ever do this. This sounds like giving up your happiness and who you are to make someone else happy. Isn't this like mind control? Like, how is this possibly ethical? And I hear you on that. When I first had these revelations about what I think this phrase means, I was a little bit uncomfortable with that as well. And I sort of came to understand this is exactly why it takes so long, and it should take so long, to find someone and then build a power exchange relationship. Because in order for this to work at all, you have to be able to have lots of very detailed conversations over a long period of time about who you are as a person, your history, your values, your intentions, your life goals, what you want from an MS relationship or a DS relationship. You have to be able to go through all of those things, because when it comes to aligning wills, it doesn't work if you are here and your partner is here. You have to be like here, right? Because you're trying to get to here. And so if you're taking this and moving one all the way over there and maybe a little bit here, right? That's not going to work. That is going to feel like giving up who you are to make someone else happy. But when you're already pretty close and just have some little minor things here and there, that is when aligning wills actually works and can be beneficial. But obviously not for everyone. And I don't think everyone recognizes this, but when you align wills, it's not always the submissive 100% moving over to the dom. It can also be the dom moving over towards the submissive. I had a conversation about this a little while ago at the recent Leather Rain convention that happened, which is kind of why this is on my mind. And we talked about how when it comes to aligning wills, actually what can happen is sometimes the D-type first will align themselves with the S-type's needs and boundaries, things like their mental health, their physical health, and their career goals. And that is what forms the basis for the journey and intention of either the D-type's personal journey and their mastery or their dominance or what have you, and also in the power exchange more broadly. And that is why it goes D-type, S-type, right? It is a give and take, although that first give, I think, is sometimes a little bit more invisible. This is not an excuse for some big dick so-and-so to come around and be like, well, you know, because I'm the real master, you have to do everything that I want, and who cares about your personal needs, and just like twisting someone into a pretzel to make themselves happy and not caring about anything else. That is not what this is about. This is why you have those really big, detailed conversations. So that way you can trust, you can know that when your partner is making decisions, they have accounted for all of those things. They know about your mental health, your physical health, your boundaries, your limits, your desires, your goals. All of that is already a factor. And so that way you can take that, you can go, okay, I know that whatever they choose, they are keeping all of that stuff in mind, and because they care about me, they are not going to lose sight of that. But getting to that place of trust that is so deep and so complete is not an overnight process. This takes time to go to, if not months, probably more like years. Now, I want to move in a slightly different direction from here, which is talking about the difference between obedience and this concept. And in order to do that, I want to revisit the blog I mentioned from 2014, which I think does a pretty good job, or at least is the only job I'm aware of talking about the differences between obedience and aligning wills. So let's look at that, and I will share my thoughts afterwards. It is not good enough for me to merely obey and to give the external yes sir. I must have the internal alignment, the internal yes sir as well. The internal yes cannot be faked. It cannot be acted. It is either there or it is not. And masters can tell when it's not. It's why the slave can seem to be compliant and obedient, and the master still is irritated. He's not a creature of habit, unless he is. He doesn't want anything the same way all the time, unless he does. The worst thing possible for me to do would be to confuse learned obedience and resignation to a current directive with alignment of will. Why? Because then when he changes direction, I'll struggle more because my will was not aligned in the first place. I see alignment of will as a way of going through the world, and obedience is an action taken. However, if the obedient action is not taken from the place of alignment of will, when the master changes direction, the slave does not follow. She stumbles. And I think this post actually does a really good job of describing why a lot of newer submissives struggle at the start of their journey. They may really want to obey, they may really want to follow a D-type's orders, but they're only really able to do it completely when it's already the way that they would do something, or already something that they would enjoy doing. So for example, it might be really easy to follow an order to strip naked and be on your hands and knees, if that's something that you already really enjoy doing and find pleasurable. However, later on in your journey, you may find that you really like service, and your D-type gives you the direction to reorganize their office. And part of doing that is reorganizing the bookshelf. And maybe some of your books are on that bookshelf. And the way that you would like to do it is you would like to sort it by subject matter and then name of the author. But your D-type may not want that. They might want it in size and color order, which you cannot stand. And then you might go, but master, my way is so much better. But master, wouldn't it be more efficient this way? And sometimes some D-types do want that feedback. They might not be very picky about how the books are ordered so long as the shelf gets reorganized. But I think what this really points out is that the submission is not in organizing the books themselves. It is in organizing the books in the way the D-type wants you to. It's doing what they want, what your D-type wants, because they want it, and not just because you want to do it the way that you think is the right way, the correct way, the best way, the most efficient, what have you. I think it's really important to be able to separate out what is the activity from what is the act of submission in that activity. And actually, what I think is the big secret of long-term DS that people don't really talk about is that sometimes your dom, your master, your what have you, is going to tell you to do things and tell you how to do things in a way that you don't necessarily agree with. They may want you to load the dishwasher or fold the laundry in a way that is completely different from how you would do it on your own. Your D-type might tell you to drive to Target to get paper towels before a party, and you might think to yourself, well, I know the Kroger is 10 minutes closer, and they're having a sale this week on paper products, so I think I should go to the Kroger instead. And this is where you, as an S-type, have to consider your D-type's priorities and values. If they are someone that values thriftiness and timeliness and efficiency, they may want to know in a respectful manner about the Kroger being closer and having a sale. You might say, ma'am, I am not sure if you're aware or not, but I want to provide the information that the Kroger is actually closer and is also having a sale. So I would be able to save us both time and money before this party if I go there instead. But all you are doing is offering information, and they could take that information and go, well, thank you for telling me that, pet, but I would still like you to go to the Target anyways because I want you to drop off this return for me, or I want to use my Target Red card, or I like the Target brand paper towels more, whatever it is. They have made their decision. Now, even doing that, even offering information is very dependent on your dynamic. For some people, they love it. Other people, they don't want to hear any back talk. They value not efficiency, not timeliness, not thriftiness. They want quick, obedient service. And so having a little debate about the Kroger sale is not something they're really going to enjoy doing. So you got to keep that in mind and know your own D type, know what you want from your relationship, and calibrate off of those expectations. Now, getting more to the point of obedience versus alignment of will that the article describes. I think the way that I would look at the difference between those two is this. I think about just obedience by itself as being very rigid, like a rock wall. It's very literal oftentimes. And while you might think that that would lead you towards obeying everything to the letter of the law, what that can also lead to is a lot of rules lawyering and trying to get around the exact way as things were said. So for example, maybe this might be too real for some people, but maybe you might be tempted to wiggle around and fight back a little bit and be like, well, sir, I know that you said I'm not allowed to have any sugar after dinner before bedtime without permission, but these are sugar-free gummy bears, so they don't count. Or, ma'am, I know you said no screen time after 10 p.m., but even though I'm on YouTube, I'm not actually watching YouTube. I have the screen turned off, and so that's not technically having screen time, is it? And I think this gets to an idea that I've talked about before, which is the difference between looking at the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And I think obedience by itself can tend towards only looking at the letter of the law while ignoring the spirit of the law when choosing actions. Whereas I think when you have an alignment of will, it is very much about understanding the spirit of the law, looking at the intentions, looking at the goals for the relationship, and looking at that spirit of the law would oftentimes lead you to a different place instead of looking at the sugar rule, let's say, where maybe if you're just looking at the letter of it, you might feel very clever and proud that you have worked out how to get sugar-free gummy bears instead of the regular sugar gummy bears. Whereas when you look at the spirit of it, you would understand that the intention of the rule is to help you have a healthier diet and trying to align your will to that instead of sneaking around it. And I think this is why the author talked about this concept of if you have obedience without aligning wills, if the master changes direction, the slave will then stumble, right? We've probably heard this before or done it ourselves. You might go, well, master, you said last week. Well, mistress, you said before. And I think that comes from obedience being more rigid and slower to change. And I'm not talking about scenarios where you maybe have a predefined contract with certain rules in it that were pre-agreed upon. Those should not be changing willy-nilly. I'm talking about when you are in the everyday life of being an S-type and you are maybe getting orders or directions on a day-to-day basis, you might be told one thing one day and something else next week or next month. And if you are blindly and only following the letter of the law exactly as it is said and not looking at anything else, it can be hard to adjust quickly when you get new orders that seemingly go against what is said before. Now, if this happens all the time and it's getting really confusing and hard to keep up with what your partner wants from you, that's different. But if it's something that seems to go along with your intentions, your values, again, your goals, I've said that so many times in this video, but when you can look at that spirit and you can understand where those directions might be changing, adjusting to that every day instead of fighting against it and questioning it is going to be a lot easier. When you can have faith in the fact that you know their intentions, that you know that you are on a journey together of mutual growth and becoming better people because of each other. When you can really lean into that trust and allow them to make decisions, even when they aren't necessarily what you would choose to do on your own, that is where a deepening of surrender can take place. That is where you can take your slavery or your submission into a deeper level. Now, one thing that I am left having conflicting feelings about after reading about this and thinking more about it is the implication that compliance or obedience alone are not good enough. And I think it could be easy to listen to this or read about it and take away that this means that everyone should be striving for 100% alignment of will at all times in all relationships. And if you can't do that, you are not a real submissive. And if you are truly aligned, you will always be blissfully happy with all of your partner's decisions. And I just don't think that's true in reality. I've taken other classes related to MS where this has been discussed before. But essentially, you can't dom someone's emotions. You cannot make them feel a way about a particular thing. You can give them orders. You can understand how those orders might make them feel. You can't tell them to be internally joyful about what they're doing, only that they should be doing it. And it's important to remember that submission, as cheesy as it might be, is a journey. It's going to be a struggle sometimes. It's going to be messy. It is not nothing but perfect bliss at all times. And I think what is ultimately more important is that on the whole, you should find being submissive or being a slave to be rewarding. And it's okay if moment to moment there's struggles. Not everything is going to come easily. Not everything is going to be natural. And sometimes what it looks like is only being able to muster keeping a scowl off your face while you do something that you don't typically enjoy. And I think those moments, as long as they aren't all the time, are okay because they are learning opportunities, right? You might even find doing those things, even if you're like, oh, I don't really like doing this, you can find, well, maybe it's actually okay. You survived. You did something that either wasn't something you liked or wasn't something that was the way you would do it, and it was okay. It was okay to lean in and do something a little bit different, because sometimes it's learning that the joy isn't always found in the activity itself, but in the joy of being able to submit to someone else's will. And alignment of will is not going to be for everyone. I want to recognize that. It's not something I think every submissive has to do. I don't think that we should all be looking for 100% total alignment at all times if that doesn't work for us. But for some people, it's a concept that really works, that takes their submission to a place that they didn't even really know was possible. And I want to leave the door open for that being something that maybe you guys also agree with and hopefully find it helpful, which is what I always want for all of my videos. And I think now is the time to wrap this one up. I have literally been filming this for like so long. It's been like 2 hours. It went from like really light to completely dark. Thank you, winter in this part of the globe. Isn't it wonderful to have it be complete darkness so early? Anyways, you guys don't care about my weather situation. You guys want to know more about my channel. So if you guys have not already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, if you want to help me do more just complete time sinks into niche topics, the best way that you can help me do that is with Patreon. A link will be down below. If you do already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.